Hi, folks. I'm Sean Crabtree.
And I'm Cameron Bailey.
We don't want to change the way you do business.
We want to change the way you're thinking about your business.
We want you to have better results, happier clients, and make more money.
Let's get it started.
Happy New Year. I have a question for you. Are you taking insurance and for this new year, you're considering dropping it?
Or are you not taking insurance and you're considering for the new year adding some PPO plans?
Then this show is for you. What we want to do in this show is break down for you the good and the bad and the ugly, and we're going to try to present a very sort of fair and balanced approach on both sides because as most of you that know us, we have no challenge with or without insurance, but we want you to have as much information as you could. And along the way, as you listen to this, we want to give you some things that probably you have not thought of and some things that are not readily apparent on both sides of that equation.
There's benefits of both.
There's benefits of both. There's downsides to both. And on Growth Profits, we want to present that in a way that maybe you have some information that you've not thought about before. Because, again, the show is all about you having happier clients, better results, and
making more money.
But we want you to enjoy the process along the way. And I mean that at the end of the day, if you're not enjoying what you're doing on a regular basis, unfortunately, Cameron and I have the opportunity to meet dentists all over the world who are not happy in what they're doing. We want you to be happy in what you're doing so you have some longevity to it. So
you know what you got to do first, Sean?
When it comes to insurance or not, what do you got to do first?
You got to begin with the end in mind.
And that is, as you guys know, if you listen to us on a regular basis, if you watch us on a regular basis, we talk a lot about having a why. We talk about your vision. We talk about you creating who it is, how it is, what it is, and where it is, and when it is that you want to go, because all things stem from that. So before we even get into the conversation,
you got to figure out what your end goal is.
Begin with the end
in mind, right? Figure out who it is, how it is, what it is that you want your business to be specifically.
And let's talk about some things. We're talking about insurance or not insurance.
Yes.
So let's talk about a few specific things when it comes to beginning with the end in mind. If you're going to figure out what is the end, right, then let's ask some questions. First of all, this is a brand new year. You got a 12-game season ahead of you, and you only have so many 12-game seasons in your lifetime.
And you got to be thinking the past does not dictate the future.
Exactly.
So we begin with the end of the mind. I've got a good thing to ask. Probably a lot of these guys don't think about these ideas, but how many employees do you want to have? Right? That'd be a good question.
And before we get into the specifics of each of these things, let's just walk through some of these questions. So some great questions as you're listening. Take notes on this because we'll put it all together here in just a second. It's about beginning with the end in mind, insurance or non-insurance. If you are in a situation where you're taking insurance and you're considering dropping it, there's several things that you need to consider. If you're in a situation where you're not taking insurance and you're possibly considering adding insurance, there's several things you need to think of. First of all, how many employees do you want to work with? You've got overhead concerns, right? So how many employees do you want to have? What's next?
How many days do you want to work? How much time do you want to be in the practice, right?
The average, well, the median.
Median, I wouldn't say average. I'd say median.
The median hours worked for dentists in the U.S. is 40.
40 a week.
Yeah.
2,000 hours, 2,000 hours a year.
Right. So in addition to, and you know what, they're all over the board. That's the median. We've got guys that work quite a bit less than that. We've got some guys that work a little bit over than that. What you have to figure out is how many days a week do you want to work and how many hours a day do you want to work?
Right.
So we got how many employees do you want to have? We're as Cameron said, what's happened in the past does not dictate the future. That's what they always say on these financial commercials, right?
Yeah.
Past performance is not indicative of future gain.
Right.
Right? So whatever's happened in the past, throw it out the window and just ask yourself, how many employees do you want to have moving forward? How many days do you want to work moving forward? How many hours per day do you want to work? Here's a good one. What kind of dentistry do you want to do?
Ooh, good question.
What
type of procedures do you want to do?
Sure. What type of procedures do you most enjoy doing?
Is that going to dictate with insurance or not insurance?
I mean, depending on what you most enjoy, it may be a non-issue. In other words, insurance may not cover what you most enjoy doing.
Right.
If you really enjoy doing cosmetics and you want to go after cosmetics,
ain't gonna cover it.
What percentage of insurance is going to cover cosmetics, or what percentage of cosmetics can be covered by insurance? So what kind of dentistry do you most want to do? Here's a good one. How many people do you, in terms of patients, how many patients do you want to see per day?
Oh, that's good.
In order to do what you do?
Yeah.
And I mean, that may sound like a loaded question. It may sound like, well,
of course,
everybody wants to see, 3 patients a day and make $5 million a year. But you know what? I don't think that's true. I've learned over the years that that's not the case. I mean, some people enjoy seeing a large number of patients.
They enjoy being busy. They enjoy being on roller skates and jumping op to op to op to op.
Right.
Having 15 hygiene checks.
That's right.
And being busy, because a lot of people equate busyness to success
with productivity.
Yeah. When the challenge is, you got to begin with the end in mind. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're making money. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're productive.
So what you're saying, Cam, is before we get into the specifics of insurance versus not insurance,
right, man,
we've got to begin with the end in mind. And part of that is, how do I want this thing to look? I need to figure out the answers to those questions and lay out my vision, because that is going to dictate where it is that we go. Now, we can talk about, which we're about to do, a lot of things to consider if you're going to begin taking insurance and you haven't in the past. And by insurance, I mean, let's be specific. We should have qualified that. When we talk about insurance, we're talking about PPO relationships. We're talking about being on par,
in network,
and contracting with insurance companies to accept their fees and accept their payments and so forth. So without getting too technical into how all of that works, because you guys who are listening understand how all of that works, we're really going to keep it on the pros and the cons of both, and let you decide. But step one, how many employees do you want to have to be able to do what you do on a regular basis? How many days do you want to work? What kind of dentistry do you want to do? How many people or patients, how many patients do you want to see per day to be able to do that
and get the outcome that you're looking for?
That is going to help you dictate what is your vision. The other thing I would ask it is, and this may sound silly, but and we may need to define a little bit, but what do you want your patients to look like?
Right.
I mean, not that you can paint anything with a broad brush, but
what do you want your consumer? Who do you want your consumer? Who's your ideal consumer? This is in any business,
right.
A dental business, any service industry, or anything. Who is the ideal consumer that you want to do business with?
And the reason that's important, we'll just move into the pros and the cons of each of these things. I mean, what do you want your patients to look like? Because in terms of your marketing, that's going to be much more important on one side of the equation if you're not going to be on par with PPO relationships.
Right.
It's going to be maybe still important, but not as important if you're taking insurance. But it's important either way in terms of, I need to figure out what I want my patients to look like, because I want to market in a targeted way to them. So I want to get as detailed as possible in terms of what I want my patients to look like. I mean,
what if somebody told you, Sean, this is just a question. What if somebody told you, I want to be everything for everybody? How many times have we heard that? I want to be everything for everybody.
And
do you believe that's possible? Do you believe being everything for everybody is possible?
I believe that your niche will be either determined by you or by the marketplace.
Right.
If you are trying to be everything for everybody, then the marketplace will on its own determine
who your patients are
and what it is that is your niche.
Right.
If you make a conscious decision on the front end that this is who I want to target, this is the kind of dentistry that I want to do, this is how I want to do it, this is how many days I want to do it, this is how many patients I want to see a day to do it. And if you target everything that's going on in your marketing, in your practice, etc., toward that, then you can determine what your niche is.
Yeah,
you are controlling it.
That's
so
sweet, man.
That's important to know if we're talking about insurance or non-insurance, because it's about beginning
with the end
in mind. So let's talk about it. Again, we're talking about, when we say insurance, we're talking about a PPO relationship. So
in network.
Right. So what are the pros and the cons? Let's talk about first, which one you want to go with?
Let's go with
network.
Insurance.
Okay.
Let's go with these guys that are out there that are PPO'd up deep. A lot of networks, a lot of insurance. I'm talking Delta, Blue Cross, MetLife, all of them.
PPO'd up deep.
PPO'd up deep. We take it all.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, we got a client in Michigan. He says, I take all insurance, some you probably even never heard of.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
Let's talk about that.
And he makes it work.
You guys he makes it work. Yeah. There is no right or wrong.
So step one, with the beginning at the end in mind when it comes to insurance or non-insurance, step one is figure out your vision. Who is it? How is it? What is it? Where is it? When is it that you want to be for yourselves, for each other, for your patients? And you do that by answering some of those questions that we just threw at you.
Exactly.
Step two, if you're going to take PPO or be on par in PPO relationships, there's some things that we have to consider. Number one, and this is not, I think, as readily apparent. Obviously, it goes without saying that you are going to have to see more patients.
Yeah.
Now, depending on what you wrote in terms of those answers, this may or may not fit you, but you're going to have to see more patients. And something that
you're going to have to see more patients to make the same amount of money.
To make the same amount. That's important. It's not about seeing more patients to make more. It's about seeing more patients than you would if you weren't, just to break even. You have to see more new patients if you're going to be involved in a lot of PPO plans. Now, what about?
I would submit one more thing too.
Okay.
You're going to have to see more patients, and you're also going to have a higher overhead because you're seeing more patients.
So you have to have
clinically.
You have to have the team,
and you're doing more work.
You have to have the supplies.
The supplies.
You have to have the resources to
tools.
Be able to see more new people.
Yeah.
So you're seeing more new people if you're on par with that. I would also throw at you that I know you can't paint anything with a broad brush, but let's face it. Let's talk about reality. The reality is, if you were heavily, as Cameron said, deep.
PPO'd up.
If you are PPO'd up deep, then here's the thing. The vast majority of the patients that you see are going to have an insurance mindset. And the way we talk about the insurance mindset is, it's kind of two things. I mean, patients don't fully understand insurance. They think it's like, dental insurance is not really insurance, but they think it is, right? So they think I got it. They think it covers everything.
It's a $20 copay.
Right. They don't understand it. So it's, and if you think about it, it makes sense, because if somebody has dental coverage, dental benefits, then the company that they work for has gone through I've been in the corporate world, and the human resources department has a big rollout every year, and they make it a big old party, and they really lay it on thick about how cool it is that you have these benefits and it's part of your package. And so if one of your patients has insurance, you can't knock their insurance, because that's a big thing. I mean, the company has spent dollars and time and energy.
Calling their baby ugly.
Right. The company has spent time and dollars trying to help that employee understand that this is a huge benefit to them, and they really lay it on kind of thick. So they're going to be insurance minded, which means that step two of this is you have got to put a lot of focus on creating value for the work.
You know what I hear all the time?
What's that?
When I'm talking to hygienists or I'm talking to assistants, and we're talking about particular patients and maybe treatment plans that didn't get accepted. Oh, they were just insurance minded. They were so insurance minded, right?
And that is just a reality. That's not an excuse
or a cop out.
That is not a cop out. That is the truth. So saying, well, they're insurance minded. Well, guess what? If you're taking insurance, they're going to be insurance minded. That's what it means. So if you don't want insurance minded patients, then you don't want to be involved heavily deep into PPO relationships. If you choose to, though, you're going to have to deal with the fact that patients are going to be insurance minded, which means the onus to create value is very, very high. So how does that look real quick? We spent a lot of videos on this. I've cut many, many videos on exactly how to do this, but just to make it quick, you have got to be great in an intake call to create a sense of urgency. When the patients come in, what's the number one thing?
Find out what's most important to them emotionally.
Not dentally.
Yes. So here's the thing. Patients buy just like every other consumer in the world. We buy things emotionally. And if we're not finding out what's emotionally most important to the patient, then when we make our diagnosis clinically of what's going on, they don't see any value in it, right? The first thing they ask is, what's my insurance cover?
Or how much does it cost?
How much does it cost? And that's not their fault because they don't understand. They're not relating your clinical diagnosis to what it's going to get them emotionally. If the most important thing to me emotionally is I want the confidence of having a great white smile, then you've got to show me how your diagnosis is going to give me that, right?
And with an insurance patient, it's much more important that you focus on that because you've got to overcome to some degree. They're kind of walking in the door with that insurance mindset already. So you have got to put a tremendous amount of effort and focus on the intake call, having the patient properly qualified when they come in the door so that we're kind of getting over that mindset a little bit. And then secondly, we got to, when we sit the patient down, we got to find out emotionally what's most important to them so that we can show them clinically
how that's going to give
whatever that treatment is going to get them what it is that's most important to them.
Right.
And then the number three thing, we're kind of dividing this into two areas. Okay. If you're taking insurance, number one is you have to create that vision by answering those questions. Number two is you've got to put a big focus on the intake call and creating value. And number three is you got to put a big focus on making the financial arrangements as easy as possible to say.
I used to have this button, the easy button. Remember that? The easy button. You got to be thinking that way when you're presenting these financial arrangements. I mean, why would you go in there and make it hard?
So let's
got to make it easy.
Just a couple things on what you and I see a whole bunch of bad things when it comes to financial arrangements. We're talking on the insurance side here. We're going to go to the non-insurance in just a second. But if I'm on the insurance side,
if I'm taking PPOs and I go in there to present a financial arrangement, whether I'm the financial coordinator, whoever you have presenting your financial arrangements, please, I hope it's not a clinical person, but if it might be. If I go in there with the treatment plan,
right,
and it looks like a buffet of all these things.
With prices beside each
prices, yeah. It looks like a menu, right? The patient is going to tell you, do I have to have the steak? Do I have to have the mashed potatoes? Do I have to have the green beans? And then they're going to go right to the bottom of the page and look at the total. And the first question they're going to ask is, what does my insurance cover? And
so making it as easy as possible to say yes would be really, instead of going after all of that, what? Come to the table, and after having the patient understand chair side how this particular treatment plan will get them what they want emotionally, then when it comes to the financial, it's just talking about the monthly payment that's required, making it as easy as possible. I mean, it's Christmas time, ask yourself this. We just had Christmas, right? Ask yourself this.
Yeah.
When you're walking around holiday shopping the last couple of weeks, what did you see advertised the most? Was it the full dollar amount of a good or service, or was it X number of dollars per month, or perhaps X number of dollars per month, 0 down, 0 interest?
Or savings. I just saw the GMC. The GMC, the Nolly 1500 truck. They've got a percentage of savings off the MSRP, and they have a dollar amount, right?
Per month.
Yeah. So if I'm taking insurance, what am I doing? I'm providing you a savings.
Exactly.
Right. And we don't do enough when it comes to presenting the financial of making a big deal out of that.
Make a big deal out of the savings and present it in monthly terms, and that's how you make it easy to say yes. So a couple of things to consider, just to reiterate, and then we'll go to the other side of the coin. If you're going to take insurance at a very high level, as Cameron says, if you're going to be deep
in the PPO,
you have to measure that against the vision that you just created, right? You're going to have to see a lot more patients just to break even, right? You're going to have more staff because you're going to have to see more patients. You're also going to have much more administrative things to do.
Much more overhead involved.
You're going to have a higher accounts receivable that you're going to have to manage. And you guys who are listening to this that are front desk people are going, oh, yes, we pull our hair out about all that all the time.
Chasing claims all the time.
So you're going to have to probably see more patients. You may have to work more hours. You're going to have more employees. Now, can it work? Absolutely. If that fits with your vision and you're focused on creating value and you're focused on making it as easy as possible to say yes and you like being busy, you can make as much money as you want when you take control of those things.
Yes.
If you don't take control of those things, insurance will run your life. It's not about do I not take the insurance as much as it is how do I control the things that really make the insurance work.
There is a positive with insurance that we're not talking about. We're kind of talking about what the possibilities could be maybe from a negative standpoint. But the positive of insurance is you've got a continuous flow of patients, right? You're using insurance to make the phone ring, to get these patients in the door. Let's be honest. That's why we have insurance. That is the scare. That is the big scare that if I drop my insurance, I'm not going to have any patients.
And so your marketing costs can be less.
Yes.
Now, I know there are dentists that are listening to this right now who are saying, you know what, I spend a fortune on marketing and I take all of these PPOs. There's nothing wrong with that. And so I would submit that you probably have an opportunity to put a lot more focus on maximizing that intake call, the emotional value, and the financial arrangement because you're seeing a lot of patients to be able to make the money that you want to make. If you will put focus on number 2 and number 3, which is intake calls, emotional values, and financial arrangements, you won't have to do as much marketing because you won't have to see as many patients. You still can fall back on the insurance and make the money that you want to make. Right. So let's go to the other side of the coin.
Other side of the coin.
If you don't want to take insurance, meaning if you don't want to be on par with PPO relationships.
If you started with the beginning in mind, the end in mind, you begin with the end in mind, and you've decided that, you know what, PPO'd up is not for me. I want to be out of the PPOs.
If that's the way that you want to go, no matter where you are right now, let's look at a couple things, okay? And again, it's the same conversation categorically that we had a second ago. You begin with the end in mind, which means you got to connect with your vision to see whether or not taking insurance supports those things that you want in terms of number of hours and days, employees, and all of that kind of thing. If you have insurance, I should have said this a moment ago.
Okay.
Going back to the insurance.
Sure.
If you're taking a lot of PPOs, and this is going to shock some people. So I understand this is going to shock some people. I hear people say all the time, you know, we take a lot of PPOs, so we write off about 45%. You know, that is not true. Okay. You may be writing off 45%, but that's not because of the insurance. It's because you are not taking control of your accounts receivable and your financial arrangements and your financial management and your third party and all of that. In a well-managed
PPO practice,
insurance PPO practice, you're going to see netted out about less than 20% of a write-off. If you've got more than a 20% write-off, there's something out of whack somewhere. You're not focused on value. You're not focused on intake calls. You're not focused on
full case
accounts receivable management. You're not focused on filing and e-filing. You're not focused on electronic deposits. You're not maximizing third party. You're not taking control of the financial arrangement. You can have less than 20% write-off and take every PPO known to man. Yeah. You can do that, and we have practices that do it, but it's a matter of taking control of those things. Now, having said that, back to the other conversation about not being involved in PPOs. The number one thing that I would say is if you're not going to be involved in PPOs, you're going to have to increase your marketing. I mean, in a healthy practice, we challenge offices that your marketing expenditure should be between 3 and 5%. But listen, if you're not where you want to get to and you're considering taking PPOs,
you got to make the phone ring, man.
Then realize what the situation is. I mean, if you're not going to take PPOs at a high level, then that means you don't have to have that 20% write-off. If you don't have to have that 20% write-off, then take a chunk of that 20% that you were going to write off of PPOs and throw it into your marketing and increase the whole reason that you would consider PPOs in the first place, which is having more patients.
Yep. And there's all kinds of ways. I mean, guys, it's 2018. 2018, man. You got SEO, search engine optimization. You got social media. You guys that are not involved in social media, you're missing a whole nother world. There's so many ways to differentiate yourself with your marketing, but you have to, like Sean said, you have to commit to spending some money on it.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Listen, if you're not going to take insurance, we're not trying to say that you need to be spending 25% of your overhead on marketing. That's not what we're saying. No. What we're saying is, if you're in a position where you're considering going one way or the other because you're not happy with what you have right now, then realize the scenario. If you're not going to take insurance or you're going to drop insurance, then take that write-off that you would have with the insurance and put it into marketing, whatever percentage you're comfortable with, but make it more than 3 to 5%. And be okay with that because you're saving that in the long term.
You know what the value of that is. That is the value. When you're in a fee-for-service, 100% fee-for-service practice, marketing is essential. It's essential.
You live and you die by the marketing. There's no doubt about it. So step one, if I'm going to begin with the end in mind, I got to start with my vision and figure out whether or not taking insurance supports all of those things. Step two, you know what? It's the same thing for a different reason as not being involved in PPOs. Step two is the same in both. If you're not going to be involved in PPOs, you've still got to put a big time focus for a different reason on creating value chairside. That means great intake calls where patients are properly qualified.
What do you mean qualified?
Making sure that the patient is coming in the door under the right mindset. So in other words, we talked about non-insurance patients. I'm sorry. We talked about patients who are PPO, heavily PPO.
Right.
They're going to come in with an insurance mindset.
Unless you bring them out of that on the intake call.
Right. If you're not taking PPO patients, then you have to be really great on the intake call with bringing a sense of urgency to the table so that the patient is coming in the door already in a mindset of buying. And we've cut a lot of videos on this. I don't think we want to spend time with that now, but go look on our channel.
Go subscribe to our YouTube channel and watch the videos about intake calls.
Yeah. We've done some webinars on that, and there's a lot of good information there. The point is, your step two, if you're not going to take a lot of PPOs, if you're not going to be deep in PPOs, then you've got to put a focus on having the patient come in the door under the right realization on the intake call, and you've got to create the emotional value by
finding out what's emotionally most important to the patient and then showing them how your products, your dentistry will give them that. You know, it's vital. Creating value is vital in both scenarios.
Right.
Listen, if you're taking PPOs or if you're not, if you do not learn how to engage a patient and create value and create a systematic approach to where you're doing that every single time, all the time, then your opportunity is walking out the door.
Right.
Where the opportunity came from insurance or the opportunity came from your marketing, you got to close the deal when it's there.
And if you're not taking insurance, each patient has more opportunity because you're not seeing as many.
Exactly.
You don't have to see as many, but each one of them has more value. So you want to spend a lot of time and a lot of focus and a lot of energy on learning to create value. And then what's the last thing? You got to, it's the same thing as in taking PPOs. You got to make the financial as easy as possible for the patient to say yes.
Yeah.
You know, in each scenario, you're competing for discretionary dollars. You want to put yourself on a level playing field with all of the other retailers and cruises and electronics and
I just talked to my buddy the other day. He called me. He's going on he's got 2 kids. He's going on a Disney cruise Okay. This thing's like 10 grand, Disney cruise. So that's what you're competing against. He's spending $10,000 for a Disney cruise for his little kids with him to go with, but you guys are competing against that, and you're not differentiating yourself. The value is not created.
And the way you do that is make it as easy as possible in the financial to say yes. They didn't sell him a $10,000 cruise at $10,000. They sold him a $10,000 cruise at X number of dollars a month, 0 down, 0 interest. Right. And that's what you got to do to be as easy as possible to say yes. It's the same conversation. Remember the conversation Cameron had a moment ago about bringing the treatment plan in?
Yeah.
And having line items with prices beside them and all that? You want to make it as easy as possible to say yes. Again, for a different reason, though. Because number one, if you're not heavily involved in PPOs, each patient is worth more because you don't have as many of them.
I forgot, you have to maximize the opportunity for the bigger treatment plan.
You have to maximize each opportunity because you have an opportunity for bigger treatment plans. There are different kinds of patients that are not insurance minded. So make it as easy as possible to say yes. And number three. So if you think about it, if this is if you're not going to be involved in PPOs, then there's really 3 steps. Figure out, number one, you got to begin with the end in mind. Figure out whether it supports your vision. Number 2, put a big time focus on intake calls and emotional value. And number 3, make it as easy as possible for your patients to say yes. On this side of the coin, if you're not going to be heavily involved in PPOs, you're going to be fee for service.
True fee for service.
Then realize it's okay to spend more on marketing because you would have spent that write-off with the insurance. So be okay with spending more. Number 2, put your focus, same way for a different reason, on intake calls, emotional value. And number 3, make it as easy as possible to say yes. Begin with the end in mind. Whether you want to take a bunch of PPOs, you don't want to take a bunch of PPOs.
Doesn't matter either way.
It starts with beginning with the end in mind.
Pros and cons for both.
It can work in either scenario. It really boils down to who do you want to be. Target as a retailer, they decide who they want to be.
I know where you're going with this.
Well, and what's the other one? I can't remember the other retail. I mean, Target knows who they want to be. They know down to the penny how many dollars they're trying to get on a per customer basis. Higher end stores know the same thing, and they're trying to see fewer people and get more money. There's nothing wrong with that. They begin with the end in mind, and what you want to do is do the same thing. Don't narrow this decision and go, do I want to be involved in PPOs or do I not? Go back over the top and ask yourself those vision questions first, and then let that dictate. Based on the answers to those questions,
you can create a plan.
Let that determine where it is that you want to be. Cameron and I deal with offices who do both all the time, all over the country. It can be fun either way.
And they're successful with both. They're very successable.
And we've got horror stories on both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
I mean, we just talked with a practice the other day that has it's a big practice.
Big practice.
They're producing about 5.6
mil.
But they're writing off about $2 million. So, I mean, now there's obviously opportunity to get control of that so that write-off is not so high. But there's still going to be a considerable write-off.
Yeah.
Now, that has to be $2 million. The other side of the coin is, we've got clients that are not involved in PPOs, and their overhead is very low, and their income is very high, and they don't have to see a lot of patients. They don't have any write-offs, but you know what? They have to have a constant, never-ending, struggling focus on the marketing. They have to be super, super focused on the marketing to be able to see that yield come back to them. So it's really up to you either way.
Let's contrast those two for just a second, then we'll get you guys out of here. Listen, $2 million write-off versus no write-off. In those two particular practices, the PPO practice, when was their first available appointment for a new patient?
4 months.
4 months out.
4 months.
So if you called that practice, they're booked up with new patients for 4 months. If you contrast that with one of our fee-for-service practices, When do you think their availability
Next
is?
week.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, next week.
Get her tomorrow. We'll see you at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
So, guys, there's no good, there's no bad, there's no right, there's no wrong. It's whatever you decide your vision for your practice is. You begin with the end in mind and work backwards to create that plan.
It's a brand new year. We got 12 games in the season. The biggest thing that we want for you is to enjoy the process. And what we know, when Cameron's talking about beginning with the end in mind, the stress comes from you're not enjoying it because some idea in your head of how it could be is not how it is. And that is a big time stressor. Begin with the end in mind and take these examples for these plans and let's go work through it and make these next 12 games the best that they possibly can be. If you like this content, share this with somebody that you know who could benefit, and always, always, always hit subscribe so that every time we release a webinar, a podcast, a video, it goes directly to your inbox. Find us on YouTube, The Crabtree Group. Look us up on the internet at thecrabtreegroup.com. Find us on LinkedIn, Sean Crabtree, Cameron Bailey. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been Dental Profits, where we are every week coming to you talking about ways to have happier clients, better results, and make more money and enjoy the process.
Have fun with it, guys.
Talk to you next week.